Arizona Wildlife Views, brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sportfish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Find birds. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildlife Views. I'm your host, Jim Harkin. Tonight we take a look at that growing problem of people trying to turn wild animals into family pets. Then we'll show you a special sporting dog that originated in Hungary. But in our first story tonight, we go up near Hoover Dam and see the measures being put in place to protect a herd of bighorn sheep that make that area their home. Here we are on Highway 93, almost to Hoover Dam and the Arizona-Nevada border. On this side, we have the Colorado River that cuts a blue ribbon through the Bajadas and provides life-supporting water for everyone downstream. On this side, we have Highway 93, a major artery leading to the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas. Caught between an immovable object and an unstoppable force are herds of majestic bighorn sheep. Today, we're capturing 30 of those sheep, affixing radio collars, and then releasing them back into the wild. Bruce Eilertz explains.
Well, this is a joint effort with Arizona Game and Fish and Arizona Department of Transportation, and this is a project that's been in motion for a long time. We're working on a serious bypass here on US 93. It's a bridge to bypass the actual Hoover Dam for many reasons, mostly for national security, and the highway just wasn't big enough.
When the bridge spanning the Colorado River is finally open and the roadway is increased from its current 2 lanes to 4, wildlife will run headlong into some serious trouble. We're here to try to mitigate some environmental impacts that could potentially occur from the road construction as well as the increased traffic. And the most affected wildlife? The desert bighorn sheep that call these lands their home.
And what we're doing is we're finding ways to move bighorn sheep from one side of the road to the other, and basically highways are a serious physical barrier to movement of wildlife all over the world. And we're finding here through radio telemetry studies that bighorn sheep don't like to cross the road, and those that do are often killed by vehicles. So today we're here to work with Game and Fish to capture sheep, collar them, and from then on out we'll use that data to bolster our research and make decisions in terms of wildlife management.
By affixing the radio collars and tracking sheep locations both before and after the expansion, we'll have a better idea of the impacts that the bighorn may be facing. And those collars, they have some very special features. Jeff Gagnon explains.
This is a satellite collar, and we can get a location on sheep every 2 hours during the day. And it's sent back to us on a computer so we can look at it on the computer and see where they've been. It's got a receiver, a GPS receiver in it, which takes the satellite locations, and then another satellite can pick those locations back up and find out where that collar's at. This also has a VHF transmitter, so when the collar falls off, or we can go in and find that animal, or find the collar and pick it up to use it later. This is the automatic release mechanism, so in 22 months this collar will fall off on the ground automatically, and we can go in and pick it up, and they don't have to wear the collar for their whole lives.
As the bighorn travel back and forth across the highway looking for food or shelter, they play a very real and very dangerous, sometimes fatal game of dodgeball, one that both the animal and the vehicle will lose.
From a transportation point of view, we have the obvious safety issue. An animal and a vehicle meeting at 80 miles an hour is not a good thing. We have property damage, loss of life, injury. There's the insurance part of that. So there's a lot of benefit to doing this now and saving money in the future.
Since a bighorn sheep isn't going to wait patiently by the side of the road for a pedestrian light to change, just how does one get a large herd of animals across a 4-lane highway? The traditional method has been with an underpass.
For sheep, they like to have line of sight. They like to know if what they're going into and coming out of. So if there's a wall there or it's offset where they can't see through it, they generally be more reluctant to go through it, worried about predators. They don't know what's going to be in there. So the smaller the structure, the harder time they have convincing themselves to go through. So the more wide open, like the one we have behind us, there's sheep under it right now. And they don't mind the more wide open where they can see, they can walk up on ledges. And so the bigger the better in the case of that visual distance that they can see.
Bighorn sheep by nature don't like to go under things. They prefer high ridge lines where they can see the activity happening beneath them. So culvert and roadway engineers had to really start thinking outside the box. If we can't get the sheep under the road, how about over the road?
The best case scenario with this animal, bighorn sheep, are the wildlife overpasses. And those are literally bridges for animals that we build over the highway. And we're going to terraform the top of these structures, soil and rocks, try to make that as attractive as possible to the animals. And as they follow the ridge line, they'll hit these overpasses and, in theory, cross right over.
And there's 3 overpasses going in along on this stretch of 93, and we've got different sizes. One of them, the biggest one, is going to be 100 feet wide, and then the other 2 are going to be around 50 feet wide. And the idea there is sheep like to be up high. So when they're crossing the highway, we suspect that they prefer to be up high and can walk on that ledge and be able to not worry about going through an area where predators may be. And so we want to have them as natural looking as possible so they'll be able to go up to them and feel comfortable going across there. And we want to have different sizes to test so we can figure out, is there a difference? Will they choose a larger one over a smaller one? And we use the fencing to funnel them to it in the first place, and then they'll use it from that point on. And we're going to be monitoring those for probably up to 4 years to see how long it takes them to get used to using those on a regular basis.
Helicopter captures are expensive, very expensive. The cost for the 30 radio collars, $130,000. Factor in the cost of employee time for the capture and the tracking, and you're looking at one very large tab. Enter the Arizona Bighorn Sheep Society. Anytime we're working with sheep, they're alongside and help defray the costs.
Yeah, I think the financial support was around $100,000. You know, there's a lot of highway mortalities over here, and so we think it's very important that we can cut down on those and keep the sheep off the highways, and supposedly that's what this is going to do, so we're excited about that.
Everybody wins here, whether you're transportation minded, conservation minded, or even just a motorist on the highway. You could rest assured that your chances of hitting wildlife in areas such as this, where this type of work is being done, are greatly reduced.
Bighorn sheep have had thousands of years to learn how to adapt to this dry, arid country. They don't have thousands of years to learn how to dodge speeding cars. Hopefully, through activities like this, we've provided an escape for the bighorn so they can continue to roam these lands.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The overpass is designed to keep motorists and wildlife safe. It's going to take several years for completion of the overpass, but we'll keep you updated on construction activities. Up next, we'll show you why trying to make a mountain lion, or any wild animal for that matter, into a pet is a bad idea.
Wild creatures are some of nature's most wonderful gifts and living connections to a world we can only observe. Watching wildlife in their natural habitat can be one of life's very special moments. They're beautiful, powerful, and separate from us, which is part of their intrigue. But when people take these animals from their natural world and bend them to try and fit into theirs, it creates nothing but disaster, and on so many levels. It's bad for the animal, bad for the person, and bad for the community. Linda Searles is the director of Southwest Wildlife Sanctuary, a licensed rescue and rehabilitation center for wild animals whose lives have been changed by man.
Cinnamon Bear was with her mother in Tucson, and she was doing what bears should do. They were foraging around in the trees, and a family saw them and thought, gee, wouldn't it be fun to feed these bears? Then we could have the mother bear and the baby bear come to our backyard every day, and it would be really cool. We'd get lots of cool pictures. So they started doing this. Well, in a very short period of time, Cinnamon and her mother became what we call nuisance bears. Once the homeowners, the family, realized this, they called the game department, who had to come out and catch the bears and relocate them. They were relocated, and within a very short time, Cinnamon made her way from the relocation point down into another urban area and started begging for food, going through trash cans, walking into people's yards, and so she had to be removed. We were able to catch Cinnamon so that she could stay here and tell her story as it is. She is now an ambassador for why you don't want to feed bears in the wild. Feed a bear, kill a bear is pretty much how it works out.
Well, unfortunately, when you buy them, you get this cute little baby alligator, which is American alligator, which is about, maybe 3 months old. They come out of the egg about 10, 11 inches long. They do this little chirping, and people think that's cute, but they grow about 1 foot a year. So in about 10 years, you got one the size of Charlie over here, who's about 250 pounds, and Lucy back there, she's a year or two younger, and she's 175 pounds, and they're not even, and Charlie's only about halfway grown.
Cinnamon the bear and Charlie the alligator will now have to spend the rest of their lives in captivity. But they are the lucky ones, because space in certified sanctuaries was available for them. Most are not so fortunate.
The fate of most of these animals is to be euthanized, because there's not enough shelters, there's not enough places in the United States that can handle all of them, because they're being bred and commercialized at such a rapid rate. So there are a lot of roadside zoos, a lot of places that they end up that are bad places that they shouldn't be, which actually will then start breeding them again.
You know, it's incredible the number of animals that come through the Wildlife Center here at Game and Fish. We have had bobcats, Bengal tigers, African lions, servals, caracals. We've had gray fox, we've had kit fox, we've had fennec fox, which a lot of these are exotics. Some of these are definitely not animals that make good house pets. We've also had black bears. Can you imagine living in an apartment and trying to raise a black bear? We actually had one that somebody thought that they could condition it and train it and teach it to live in an apartment. That is never going to happen.
But people still keep trying to make it happen. In order to make a wild animal fit into their lives, the animals are often mutilated in an attempt to make them more domestic. This mountain lion was living in a house in Phoenix and was the victim of a botched declawing job, and now has to undergo more surgery to try and relieve her painful feet. The same fate befalls many bobcats and other exotic cats. You don't have to take an animal directly out of the wild to end up with a wild critter in your house. There is such a demand for these animals that there's a flourishing trade in exotic species, which is, more often than not, illegal.
Plus, when you do that, you're promoting the exotics trade, which is promoting cruelty. You're promoting a trade that oftentimes sells animals to whoever will buy them, whether it's legal for the people to have them in that state or not. Thus posing heartbreak on the people when they have to give up their animal, and then the animal ultimately loses his home or his life. So in all, it's a lose-lose-lose situation for the animal, and it's a lose situation for the people that bought the animal. And when they buy that animal, they've left another space on the shelf, which will be filled by that breeder. When you go to zoos and you see lots of baby animals, you have to wonder where they go. And the way the exotic pet trade actually started, the way a lot of these animals ended up in private ownership. For example, tigers. There are more tigers in private ownership in the United States now than there are in the wild in the world. And that is a very, very sad statement. And the way this happened is a lot of zoos were breeding animals excess because the public liked to see baby animals, so it got ticket sales up. When you see baby white tigers, and every year they have baby white tigers or they have baby tigers, you have to stop and ask, where are they going at the end of the year when they're grown up? Where do those animals go? Because next year they have another litter, and the next year they have another litter.
You also look at Montana, the bald eagle. She came to us about 3 years ago. Last April she was 6 years old. She was born in a nest on the Missouri River just outside of Bozeman, Montana. Probably during the migration, she was on her way down and apparently possibly got hit by a car, but she had a broken wing. The thing is, we know somebody definitely had her in captivity, tried to rehabilitate her, did not know what they were doing, did not get the proper medical care and treatment for that wing. So because of that, she's no longer able to be released in the wild. Unfortunately, now she's going to be in captivity for the rest of her life, which is really sad.
The serval was being used to breed exotic cats by breeding a serval, an African serval, to a domestic cat to create hybrid cats called Savannahs. And this is very popular, and they're doing this with a lot of different breeds of cats today. It's a cruel process. Most of these animals make really lousy pets in homes. They are very fractious, they're very nervous, flight type animals. They typically will only bond to one person in the household. So it's just a bad idea. It's bad for the animals, it's bad for the exotics as well.
All of these animals have instincts that you cannot change, things in their wild nature that are destructive and dangerous in private life. Russ Johnson of the Phoenix Herpetological Society has a great respect for the reptiles he rescues.
You read about in Florida all the time somebody being attacked. They don't know the difference between us and a pork chop.
A lot of people say, well, if this cat's domesticated, if the bobcat's domesticated, why can't I keep him in my house, or the serval or the mountain lion? Because, you know, they lay on the sofa, they act sweet. Everybody knows what their house cat, if you had a house cat before in your life, you know what that house cat can do to you. If they're frightened, if they play too rough, if they're angry, they can do serious damage to you. So take that strength and that danger and multiply it times 20 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds. Now you're talking about serious injury, possible death, especially to a small child in the house or a visiting grandchild or neighbor child. This is just a bad, bad idea. Not good for the animals, very unsafe for the family, for the children, for the neighborhood.
And just because an exotic animal is not illegal to have, doesn't mean it has any business being a household pet. The iguana is the #1 animal surrendered to the Herpetological Society.
Well, our #1 rescue is the green iguana by far. We do several rescues, probably between 50 and 100 a year just in the green iguanas. The green iguanas are, we call somewhat a disposable pet because of their inexpensive cost. They're generally run about $25 in the pet store. Tiny little lizards about 6 to 8 inches long when they start. They're somewhat handleable at that point. People buy them and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then they either move or something's changing in their lifestyle and they can no longer take care of this thing, and then they either dump it off in their yard. Green iguanas won't survive out here in the Arizona desert. It's too hot and too dry. They basically start having kidney failure in about 3 weeks. It's much too dry and there's no humidity here. They come from a very lush tropical environment. So again, number one on the rescue list or turn-in list for us is the green iguana.
So that means that private and government agencies are left to deal with the problem.
Well, Animal Care and Control is primarily responsible for dogs and cats, but our phone room receives a good 40,000 calls a month, and quite a lot of those calls are from individuals who have gotten an animal that they shouldn't have gotten. They didn't take the time to research the animal. They thought it was cool at the time to get the animal, and now all of a sudden they're dealing with problems. It's startling to me. It's startling that people would consider getting an animal without doing the research and without thinking about who this animal is and what the animal's needs are and how that's going to impact their life and their family. They get animals for the wrong reasons, and then we end up with the problems and the calls, and other agencies end up with the problems and the calls down the road.
Another thing that we have happen is people turning them loose, thinking, well, wolves or wolf hybrids born in captivity could learn to revert easily to the wild. Mountain lions that I raised in my house with my family could easily revert to the wild. Not true. They're going to pose a serious threat to people, and they're most likely going to be shot in very short order. If you have an animal like this and you need to turn it in, call the game department, call the American Sanctuary Association, call us, look for an accredited sanctuary, because otherwise they could fall back into the hands of somebody that's going to breed more.
Getting animals into a sanctuary is only part of the challenge. Since these facilities are nonprofits that run on donations, they have the burden of housing, feeding, and caring for these animals.
We could use a lot of help, anything from labor to, we've had a nice construction company has donated some wood for us on a building we're building and some insulation. And right now what we need is the funds to do this.
Oftentimes when we get these animals in, people will say to me, well, gee, you've got these 2 beautiful mountain lions. Surely there's lots of zoos that would want these mountain lions. There's lots of zoos that would want these bears. Why don't you give them to them? The zoos don't have room for them. There are too many. The exotics trade have produced too many mountain lions, too many black bear, too many tigers, too many of everything. So there is a huge, huge surplus. You can buy a tiger for as little as $350. You can buy a mountain lion for $350. But when they're grown, they now pose a danger to the family, and they're now costing you $800 a month to feed them. And that's when the people decide, gee, this wasn't such a good idea, and we want to place this animal. And there's only so many places to place them. We're filling up and running out of space, and that they're still breeding. Wild animals are exactly that. They're wild, and they deserve to have the right to be wild and free. They don't deserve to be caged or locked in a house. We have dogs and cats, domesticated animals that have been domesticated for thousands of years that make very appropriate, very good pets. And wild animals don't. They bite, they mark their territory by urinating and defecating in your house.
Perhaps Russ Johnson puts it best.
Anything you can't cuddle up to really doesn't make any sense to have as a pet.
Especially when there are so many wonderful domestic animals waiting for a home. Animals that depend on people to survive and that are very good in the cuddle department. Wild animals are unique, mysterious, and fascinating, but only if they're allowed to be what they are and not what we want them to become. Respect their wildness and leave them where they are. Don't exploit them by aiding the exotics trade. Instead, go out in Arizona's great outdoors and experience them as they should be. Wild and free.
Today, you'll meet what could be the perfect sporting dog. He's part pointer, he's part retriever, and he's not so big that he takes up all the space on the couch.
This is a 10-month-old vizsla dog. The males range from 22 to 24 inches at the shoulder. I'd say they have a gentle manner, but they really don't have a gentle manner. They're just very exuberant. They like to be with their people, commonly referred to as the Velcro dog. Wherever you are, they are, particularly the males. They say that they're a versatile breed because they're as at home in the field as they are in your living room. And that was the reason that I bought one in the first place. My husband was a hunter, and I wanted a dog that wasn't going to be too overwhelming, that would be nice at home, and that's how they were advertised. They were bred in Hungary. They were recognized by the American Kennel Club in 1960, so we're coming up on our 50th year of recognition. A lot of times you'll see 2 different types of vizslas. We had vizslas that were bred for upland game, which is the birds. So that would be quail and pheasant and chukar. And those dogs were hunted on the plains in Hungary. And so they were maybe a little bit lighter built dog. And then there were other vizslas that were more in the forests of Hungary, and those dogs are a little bit heavier boned, and they were used to hunt large game, like deer and elk and things like that. So that's why sometimes you'll see a difference in the vizsla that some will be a stockier dog and some will be a little bit lighter on their feet. They're a good family pet, but they do need to be brought along with the children. I don't know anyone that has young children that hasn't had a good vizsla with them. It seems like any of the puppies that I sell, when they go into family homes, they seem to do very, very well. The upkeep is nothing. When I had a swimming pool, I used to, before I'd go to the dog shows, I'd just throw the dogs in the pool and let them dry off in the crate on the way to the dog show. So that's the best ones for me because I don't like to have to maintain a lot of coat. They're a fun dog. They're always up for it. They want to play with the ball. They just want to do stuff, and mostly they just want to be with you.
And that's our show for this evening. If you have questions about anything you saw on the show, go to our website at azgfd.gov. For producers Gary Schaefer and Carol Lynn, I'm your host Jim Harkin. Thanks for watching.